As an institution, we have spearheaded green initiatives within this technopolis, right from our design guidelines, which require sustainable development. And what do we mean by sustainable development? Whereby we, in all activities being carried out, we are saying that it has to serve the needs of the present generation, taking into consideration the needs of the future generation. And all that we are doing at the Technopolis, from all the designs, from the roads to the basic infrastructure, the horizontal infrastructure, vertical infrastructure, all green initiatives have been put in place. Given that we are talking about the green building, we are very proud as KoTDA Technopolis to have our Konza complex, which is one of the leading buildings that is headed for green certification. All buildings within the Technopolis, from design to construction, will be required to be certified for green, undergo green certification. And we have various systems which we believe during this conversation we'll be able to learn about, such as LEED, Green Star, so on and so forth. Now, we take this very important initiative to lead in sustainability within the Technopolis in various aspects. And what I can, in summary, say as we get towards the webinar, we look at the green aspects of our building, starting right from energy conservation, water conservation. We talk about issues of recycling. And one of the greatest projects that we have at Konza Technopolis, which demonstrates this fact, is what we call the wastewater reclamation facility, in which all the water within this Technopolis is recycled and used for irrigation and within water closets in all infrastructure that will be built within the city. One key unique aspect of Konza Technopolis is that it's a smart city. And what do we mean by smart? Smart and sustainable. All environmental aspects within this Technopolis will be monitored. That is air quality, water quality, to ensure that we have an environment where each person who will live and reside within this Technopolis will be able to enjoy a very good environment. And as we discuss further as to what various green initiatives, one of the key highlights on our infrastructure is where we're doing complete roads with green parks and green spaces. We want people to enjoy the environment as they live within this particular facility. Last but not least, I'd like to mention the only technology that will be found in East and Central Africa within Kenya, and in Kenya at Konza Technopolis, is the automatic solid waste facility, which is able then to take solid waste, whether it's paper, organic matter, in a vacuum system for collection in a central repository for recycling. It's one of its kind, the one and only that will pass through a utility tunnel that ensures we have very efficient infrastructure within this particular Technopolis. So that is an overview of what we have in terms of the infrastructure. And as a construction operations and management department within the Technopolis, our charge, therefore, is to also ensure that we have a lot of green initiatives, including tree planting, which we were very honored this morning, as mentioned, to do tree planting with two of our CSs, our CS of ICT and CS of Foreign Affairs, with all our staff and friends from the Green Building Society. And therefore, I'd like to take this opportunity, even as we begin this particular webinar, to welcome each and every one of us to understand the importance of this week and to understand the key role Konza Technopolis is playing with regard to leading green initiatives within the Technopolis. So without saying much, I'd like to then take this opportunity to welcome my director, Director Carol Morioki, who's our board member, to go ahead and give further opening remarks as we welcome guests towards this seminar. Welcome, Carol.
So thank you very much. This is honestly a really exciting time to be a director at KONZA and also to participate in this activity that really is very close to my, to my heart as well, because this is what I do for a living. And as we look forward to making KONZA the greenest and most sustainable city, then it's an appropriate time. I don't know whether you would want me to make my presentation at this time or just to welcome the guests and the participants.
Madam Director, would like you to represent the authority. The chairman, the CEO are already out there in the field, and our PS is in, who is the patron of this monthly webinar. We would like you to help us invite the guest and set the tone for us.
Okay, thank you very much. On behalf of KONZA, we are really honored to be hosting this webinar. And again, also on behalf of our ministry, our PS, and also our CS, who is really passionate about the greening of KONZA and the whole country at large. He has charged us with having at least a minimum of 10 million seedlings in the next 1 year. So that's not any mean feat. And I guess that's what will also make this whole activity come to the forefront of our agenda. And for the Green Building Society, thank you very much for finding KONZA a worthy partner during this exciting week on the Green Building Society Week. And we believe that together we shall not only create KONZA as a green city, but also influence many other cities, not only in Kenya, but also in Africa. So I hand over to you to continue.
Thank you so very much, Madam Director. At this juncture, before we invite our peers to give the keynote address, I'd like to invite the CEO of Kenya Green Building to introduce the panelists who will be joining us in a few.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. We are really honored to be here as the Kenya Green Building Society. As introduced, my name's John Kabuye, currently Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya Green Building Society. The chief guest, the PS, Jerome Ocheng, chief guest, PS Charles Hinga, members of KONZA. It's my pleasure to come here today and be part of this exciting program. And of course, to take this chance to introduce to you who the speakers are or who are going to run us through this webinar. So we have an exciting panel of speakers this afternoon, and we will be running through a topic which basically speaks about green infrastructure and transformative pathways towards climate action. And to do so, we have several speakers. The first one, of course, is our chairperson and the winner of the Chairs of the World Green Building Council's Chair Award, Madam Elizabeth Shege. The second panelist, of course, we will have Madam Caroline Kariuki. She will come back as a panelist also to speak about green infrastructure. We will also have one of our speakers as well is Madam Safiatou Diallo. Madam Safiatou Diallo is from a company called BuildX, which are specializing in special materials for building, especially materials related to the natural environments. We will also have Mr. Jagi Gakunju, a businessman and ontologist, who will also be amongst our panels. We will also have Mr. Christopher Flowers, Managing Director of Kakuzi PLC. And final but not least, we will have Dr. Vatsal Bhatt, who is the Vice President of Lead Cities and Communities at the US Green Building Council. So those are going to be our panelists who will take us through the session later on after we hear from our chief guests. Thank you so much, and I hand it over back to you, June.
All right, thank you. What I didn't mention is that John would be our moderator for the panel session. Allow me to remind our guests today that this is a physical and a virtual session, and our protocol officer, Madam Josephine, had just reminded me to highlight the fact that unless you are the speaker, kindly have your videos off. Let's just have the speakers videos on. We have a live audience here. I cannot approximate, but there are probably maybe 50 people physically here, and you are waiting for another 20 who are finishing up with the field session. But physically here, the crew would like to have the video on so that we can have that seamless interaction. Without so much ado, I would like to hand over the session to Madam Caroline Kariuki, who will make a presentation. Thereafter, invite our peers.
So thank you, everybody, and thank you for this opportunity to just share on the role of forestry in creating sustainable cities. I wear two hats. I sit as a director of KONZA, and the second role that I play is that I run a company called Greenport Enterprises, and we grow bamboo forests. But today it's not about bamboo. Today it's also about KONZA and also on a wider scale, the role of forests in creating sustainable cities. Maybe it's also good to put everything in perspective. From an African perspective, 2 to 3 billion people will move into the middle class in 20 years' time. The second important fact is that 1.4 billion people will be the population of Africa by the year 2030, and that will grow to 2.5 billion people by the year 2050. And of these people, 54% are currently living in urban cities. That's a total of 4 billion people. And 60% will be living in the urban cities. So there'll be a huge growth in urbanization. And they say that 1% growth in urbanization leads to a 14% increase in wood demand. So as we think about KONZA and also other sustainability issues, we need to think about all these facts, because it's important in urbanization to really think big and also to take a long-term view of what we're doing. So we need to ask ourselves a number of questions. Firstly, what will these people eat? And where will that food be sourced? How will these cities be powered? And can we provide more efficient and affordable energy? Where will they live? How will we provide affordable housing? We talk a lot about it, but do we really think through what it takes? And also, all these people need jobs. Where will the jobs come from? And I'm proposing that one of the key areas that if we think about our forests and how they interact with us in the whole country as a whole, but also specifically in our sustainable cities, then we'll be able to think through and find solutions for the critical aspects of our country. Now, Africa is already losing more than 4 million hectares of forest every year. And that is because of both urbanization, but also the demands of the population. More than 70% of our people use firewood and charcoal as their principal source of wood fuel. And then because the poorest of our people, again, also cause the greatest emissions, because we are using and we are using charcoal and things like that, which are also very huge pollutants. So as we think about sustainable cities, we need to think about reducing our carbon emissions. So if we rethink our cities, this is a picture that I borrowed from FAO, and they just talk about sustainable agriculture, just having the built environment very much closely related with nature. And if you can see the green roofs and everything, and I'll go a bit into that. So I'll think about this from an internal perspective and also from an external perspective. So is it possible for us to make Konza the most beautiful city? Just have a very deliberate greening program where we think about flowering trees or all our streets being lined with trees. And that is a possibility, but it has to start now. The planning has to be early so that then you have a very organized way of making our city beautiful and well organized. If we think about our streets or even just the roadside, can we have beautiful rock gardens lining the whole of the Konza ecosystem, and all our streets and our estates having beautiful trees, but this has to be very deliberate. What about our rooftops? Why must we have empty roofs or a place where roofs are not used? Can they become beautiful places where you can even feed the population? So these are some of the things that we need to think about as we look at it. At Konza, we are very privileged to have a lot of wildlife. Can conservation be a part of our lives? We don't have to replace everything with exotic species. We can even use what we have and also enhance it and make it into nature trails and really a closer walk and a special place that will be called Konza in terms of interacting with our natural wildlife. What about our water? As we recycle our water, is it possible for us to have beautiful parks where people can go and make it places of rest and recuperation? And then now, just briefly, just looking at the outside of the city, we are relying heavily on places like Thwake Dam, and this is not exhaustive in any way. And this will be the lifeblood of Konza because it will provide our fresh water sources and guarantee that the city can grow without fear of not having water. Water is a critical aspect. But we also then need to think, where is this water coming from? The Thwake Dam the source of the Thwake Dam water is the Athi River. Now, the Thwake Dam in its intentions will intend to create about, will be able to touch more than 1.3 million lives and provide water to Konza, among other people. The cleaning of the Athi River will then become a critical aspect of what we do as Konza, and this can form a very important part of our greening program. It will also generate hydropower, and also it could be a tourist attraction that people can actually visit and see the impact of what we have done very deliberately as Konza. Now, in terms of creating a source of energy for the people, we talked about 70% of the people relying on wood fuel as a principal source of what they use for cooking on a daily basis. Can we very deliberately move and create green programs where we then in the neighborhood think about how much energy is required in all the counties around us and deliberately then afforest those areas. Also developing agribusiness and agroforestry value chains that can also create employment and also ensure that the water sources that we have are protected, change the microclimate of the whole city, and also ensure that even as we think about the built environment, that all the products that we're using in the city could actually be grown through Konza's efforts. Tourism is also a big one. So as you look at our current situation on Athi River, this is what it looks. If we put garbage in, obviously the water that comes to Konza will not be clean. So as part of our deliberate efforts as Konza, as we think through the greening program, we need to target the whole of Athi River, all the way from the source perhaps to the end of the river, which is in Mombasa. And that can also become one of the programs that we own and champion to ensure that the water that comes into Thwake Dam and the environs of Konza is very clean. So that's something that we could possibly do. And I want to leave us with a picture of where we need to be in 10 years. This is actually a city it's a place in China where they've planted the bamboo, and that has helped to clean up the river and restore the environment, the degraded environments. And perhaps this is some of the things that we need to think about as we think about our sustainability as a city. In terms of green architecture, I know a lot has been spoken by other speakers about green architecture in the cities, and I will not belabor that point. But with specific reference to forestry, where will we source our wood products? Are they from sustainable sources? Those are some of the standards that we need to make sure that happen. Is landscaping with native vegetation also part of our plan? It's very easy for us to target exotic species, but we can also really harvest the beauty of our own native vegetation from the areas around us. And then also maximizing solar reduces the pressure on other trees and the forests that we are creating. So that will have to go hand in hand and ensure also that our buildings are really sustainable, so that then we use as little as possible of the green, of electricity and other things that then put pressure on other ecosystems. So as we look forward to having Konza taking shape, we think we will have a green city by design. And some of the efforts that we are making will then pay off in the long term. The picture above is of Singapore, one of my most favorite places, where they really have deliberately greened their city. And we will need to make sure that even in the designs that we have, that they are both beautiful and also really targeted to be green, whether it's in the buildings and also in just stretching our imagination to make sure even green transportation, to ensure that we are also reducing our carbon footprint. So, I talked a lot about the energy because that's a critical aspect and one of the biggest causes of deforestation in our country. So even as we look at our own internal uses within Konza, we also need to think about our 10-kilometer buffer zone. What are the communities in those areas using? How can we make sure that we also go into research to ensure that they're using the best technologies to reduce the amount of energy that they use? And well, these are not really, it's not rocket science to have really carbonized briquettes. But what it means is that instead of having charcoal that burns for 1 or 2 hours, it would mean that we would then have solutions that burn 5 to 7 hours, together with environmentally friendly GCOs and reducing pollution from our industries by using clean energy. So how will we win as I come to a close? The countries that succeed will have to take a long-term view and a short-term and medium long-term goals, which are measurable. And then we say, this is what we want, not just ad hoc tree planting activities, but very clear goals that then clearly outline what are we going to achieve, how will we know that we have succeeded, what are the measurable, what targets do we have, what are the policy incentives for growing of trees? Is it something that we can reward so that everybody who comes in, it counts for them? How do we then also look at the carbon credits as a way of funding our green agenda? It's very expensive to create forests. So can we do that using carbon program? How do we also make sure that the people who are growing the trees, it becomes a lifestyle, it becomes an economic activity that pays back and creates employment for our people? Choosing the right tree species that will not use too much water, because we are a water scarce area, is also very important. And also working with the community, both inside Konza and outside Konza, and engaging them in a long-term tree planting program that will then reward, whether the children could actually plant trees for their birthdays. in their schools and make sure that the schools get revenue from this. Also, having commercial agroforestry is something that we can work on together with the communities around us. And the buffer zone planting will also be critical. So as I end with a quote from Dennis Weaver, that we do not have to sacrifice a strong economy for a healthy environment. So thank you very much. Over to you.
We are lucky to have a physical audience, so a round of applause. Asante sana, Director. We would, if we had not known that you are virtually out there, we would have actually assumed that you had a chat with our CS this morning before he came to Konza. Because some of the issues have highlighted what he said out there in the field. One of them is really commercializing trees. He said, why can't we have a part of Konza have commercial tree nurseries? He's been really pushing the agenda of engaging the community, and we've started the process, and through our partnership with the Green Building Society, we hope to reach beyond our neighborhood in Konza and other parts of the country. I'm sure the director, the chairperson will mention that they have youth chapters in different parts of the country, among them Kilifi, and those are the groups that we are going to work with going forward. We started a conversation with Athi Water Services Board. We realized that the areas that they're already setting up boreholes are potential spaces where we can involve the youth in actually tree nurseries, because one of the greatest challenges is availability of the right species, which you've also mentioned, and most importantly, our initiative in terms of buffer zone. Thank you so very much. We had requested you to invite our PS who has already joined. He's our keynote speaker. But before I ask you to invite our PS, I would like to request some of our guests who've just come in. Unless you're a speaker, would kindly request that you mute your video, kindly. Unless you are speaking, kindly mute your video. We can still see you. Please mute your video, with the exception of the speakers.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Director. Over to you.
Thank you very much, June, for the honor of sitting out here and having the privilege of inviting our PS, who is our keynote speaker today. Your commitment, Jerome, has been just impeccable, and without just paying homage because you're our PS, we know that you have owned Konza and you've worked with us to make sure that Konza is the beautiful city that it is today. So as we talk about this great initiative, we wish to just welcome you as our keynote speaker to give us your pearls of wisdom this afternoon. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Director Caroline, for your great presentation. And we really appreciate the work also the board is doing in this particular space. And good afternoon, participants, both physical and virtual. I am one of the virtual. Let me start by saying, let me send my greetings from Kisii County. Due to the interest I had in this, I just said, despite being out of the office, I was still going to have an opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts about what we are discussing today. Indeed, this is a great opportunity that we as a country need to take advantage of. So let me say that I really take this opportunity to extend a warm welcome to you all to this webinar on green infrastructure and urban greening for sustainable cities and communities, hosted by the Konza Technopolis Development Authority. As this is the World Green Building Week, which is an annual campaign that encourages everyone to deliver greener buildings, the Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs is involved in various activities to mark this year's event, and this webinar is a key highlight as it brings together various stakeholders in government and the private sector. Through the Konza Technopolis and the Communication Authority of Kenya, we have embarked on a tree planting exercise and virtual engagements such as this one, in partnership with various state and private agencies, including the Kenya Green Building Society, the Ministry of Environment and Forestry through the Kenya Forest Services, the Kenya Forest Research Institute, amongst others. This week, we have planted trees at City Park, Nairobi, as well as launched the ACT platform, which is a digital platform that uses data to help measure and improve sustainability performance across the built environment. The platform has been instrumental in helping us to track carbon emission in existing buildings and will also be instrumental in tracking the performance of current and future urban greening initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen, through Konza's greening strategy, we aim to build a smart city with a healthy environment that promotes an improved overall quality of life and experience for residents and even the neighboring communities. And really, I like the presentation when Carol was making her presentation and saying we also need to focus beyond our buffer zone, that is our neighbors. The program also targets to make Konza Technopolis as the leading green city in Africa and providing a model for green cities and urban areas in the region. To achieve this, KoTDA will establish a smart tree nursery at Konza Technopolis, targeting to produce at least 1 million seedlings within a period of 3 years. The nursery is expected to produce the required seedlings for greening the Konza Technopolis and also contribute towards the country's target of achieving 10% tree cover by the year 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, this webinar brings together experts and stakeholders in technology, urban planning, construction, financial services, and environmental services, amongst others. It is our desire that through this engagement, we can leverage the expertise in these respective fields to probe the role of smart cities in climate change adaptation and resilience, leverage on science and technology in improving the long-term sustainability of our urban ecosystem, and eventually develop model urban dwelling spaces that can be adopted across the nation. We also seek to understand how our green infrastructure and our urban greening initiative can support the government's Big Four agenda of enhancing manufacturing, food security, universal health coverage, and affordable housing. Through this webinar, we seek to spark a conversation and action within the construction industry to act on climate change and build momentum in adoption of net zero carbon building for our COVID-19 recovery and beyond. We also wish to encourage the financial sector to be innovative and innovate and develop products that will spur investment in the green building industry. Our discussion today will go a long way in informing the next phase of Konza Technopolis as a leading green city in Africa, providing a model for green cities and green urban areas in the world. In conclusion, let me state that as a ministry, we support Konza's environmental effort as it is a key aspect in the development of the Technopolis. I would also like to urge other organizations and partners to support Konza's quest towards creating green Technopolis, as this is the heritage we can leave behind for future generations. I would also wish to take the challenge that we can actually take a concept whereby we will be planting trees during our birthday, and that was proposed. And I would even wish to take it a step further and say, when we normally say that during the celebration we have a cake with candles, representative of your age, then instead of blowing the candles, Let's say that every year as you celebrate your birthday, you'll be planting trees equivalent to the age that you attain that particular year. So basically planting the trees the number of your age. If each one of us took that particular initiative, by now, or in the next 3 or 4 years, the number of trees planted would really indeed be tremendous. And as I conclude, I wish to challenge all of us to respond to the National Climate Change Action Plan by developing and adopting strategies for creating green urban ecosystems, involve the youth in developing innovative green building technologies, and also build momentum towards the adoption of net zero carbon building. Once again, I wish to welcome you all to this webinar and look forward to a great session with you all. Thank you very much and wishing you all the best in this particular webinar.
Thank you very much, PS, for continuously supporting us and pushing us to ensure that we light the candle and put it on the table. For the longest time at KoTDA, we've been having our initiatives and we've not thought it right to probably talk about it, but you've actually pushed us and been present to ensure that monitor our initiatives through the monthly webinars. We truly appreciate. At this juncture, we would like to move to the panel session, and I would like to invite the moderator of the session to take it up from here.
Thank you so much, John, for this opportunity to start the panel session. But before we begin the panel session, I wanted to open it up to the chairperson of the Kenya Green Building Society, Elizabeth Chege, to give some remarks about the World Green Building Week. And then after that, we can be able to dive straight into the panel session, where I'll be able to introduce all the panelists, those present and those online. They'll be able to come on and they'll introduce themselves, and then we'll go for the Q&A. So over to you, Elizabeth, to talk to us about the World Green Building Week and what it means globally.
Thank you, John, and good afternoon to everyone today. Thanks for joining us today. So World Green Building Week, I have a presentation there and also a bit of an introduction about Kenya Green Building Society. What we can see on the screen there, I'll say next. So we're only talking about action. We believe that the last few years, been enough talk, so we have to showcase what we're doing. When we talk about net zero buildings, it's buildings that are positively impacting on the environment, for communities, for the planet, and for economies. I'm also speaking on behalf of the World Green Building Council as the Vice Chairperson for the Africa Regional Network, who are following this session as well. Next slide, please. So Kenya Green Building Society is an independent, non-profit, non-political, member-based organization. Some of our members you've seen in the printouts today. You'll see that ABSA is our premier member, ACON, who had the first green bond in the country, Majid Al Futtaim, you might know them as CAR4, are our premium members, and we have other members as well who are online. We are also an emerging status member of the World Green Building Council, and this year we submitted to be an established member. In Sub-Sahara, it's only South Africa who's an established member. What do? We lead the transformation of the built environment in Kenya toward environmentally sustainable buildings, and we also build a green economy value chain. How do we do that? Through advocacy. Hence, you can see the relationship with government and the request for a green building policy to actually be drafted and enacted, because we can already do it and we're doing it at KoTDA. Education, if you don't know about green buildings, please get in touch with us. By next year, we should have more people talking about green buildings. So far, we've trained over 300 professionals. Certification of green buildings. We have the certification, we have the tools, because what you don't measure, you can't manage. And everyone, as the chair of KoTDA told me earlier, if we didn't have goals and goalposts, then everyone would just score. Next slide, please. So the consistent messages that we have is build back better. We know that during COVID-19, a lot of people took a slower take on development economies, etc. We have a great opportunity to do it right and follow through. Mr. IT, next slide, please. As he's bringing that back, I'd like to talk about the certification systems that we have. Our engineer here has mentioned that KoTDA has a requirement for buildings to be certified. That's exactly what we're asking the government of Kenya to do, to require that new buildings get certified and independently assessed. The rating tool that we're looking at is Green Star Africa Kenya, that carries about 10 categories that we'll talk through during the webinar process. We also have the US Green Building Council lead. So following SDG 17, the Kenya Green Building Society has various agreements with the US Green Building Council, the Green Building Council of South Africa and other countries through the World Green Building Council. Recently, as PS Hinga and Kenya Green Building Society actually showed, we had a decree that all affordable housing must meet IFC EDGE as the minimum standard. So already you can see if you're not doing green, you have to do green. So moving on back to the presentation, our theory of change is to work with everyone, national and county government. We have 2 county governments that have signed up already. We have Nairobi County, Nakuru County that we're working with. We're still in talks with Kisii County to get more action, and Homa Bay County are looking at coming on board as well. We work with the private sector, so we're representing private sector members as we sit here today. And we have the DFIs and other NGOs. One I can mention is UN Habitat, who will have their Habitat Month coming in October. Next slide, please. I think we are all on air, so the webinar is a bit slow in changing slides. But the bottom line of this is to actually show that Kenya Green Building Society is actually here for you. And our messaging from the World Green Building Council and our teams is that if buildings are responsible for 39% of global carbon emissions, 39%, it gives us the greatest opportunity to actually curb that by building green. If KoTDA City spends the amount of money they're spending now and resources for development of KoTDA City and they don't build green, it means those resources, every year we have a flood, every year we have droughts, will be wasted. We're seeing that in the rest of the country. So the opportunity is that the rest of the country can learn from KoTDA Technopolis, and for us, we really want to showcase KoTDA to the rest of the world through the World Green Building Council and the Africa Regional Network. So some of the global projects we have are advancing net zero, and Honorable PS has mentioned that quite clearly, that we should target that. By 2050, all buildings must be net zero carbon. Better places for people. I think you all went home or you hid in a building somewhere when COVID came. We were told to stay safe and stay home. And this is the time that we've really realized how buildings impact our health. And we have a program on that as well. Last but not least, we have Cities and Building Efficiency Accelerator, where we're supporting cities, including KoTDA City, to actually get into those targets. Last slide, thank you, which is a call to action. I've mentioned this before, that by building back better, we're actually targeting to save 39% of the carbon emissions. And we are also advocating that the national determined contribution, of which we are following the National Climate Change Action Plan, requires that buildings give their performance data. Hence, we launched the ARC platform earlier this week. On to the last slide, please. So this is a movement that we'd like all of you to join, which is for action for net zero buildings, for economies, for planet and people. Thank you. There's a message from the World Green Building Week and the World Green Building Councils across the world. Once the IT team is ready, they'll play that for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for that introduction about the Kenya Green Building Society and also the World Green Building Week, which we are celebrating this week here in Kenya, but it's also being celebrated around the world by all the green building councils globally. We are about 90 green building councils and counting as more countries get their green building councils. So now this is a time when we now indulge our panelists. And we have some panelists live here with us on set, and we also have some of our panelists virtually. So I will kindly take this opportunity to ask our panelists who are virtually to switch on your cameras so that we can be able to see you. That means Madam Caroline Kariuki will switch on your microphone, sorry, your camera again. We have Madam Safiatou Diallo, please switch on your camera. We also have Dr. Vatsal Bhatt. Please, if you are on set virtually, please switch on your camera and then we can be able to get started. So there we go. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, those who are listening to us. This is the panel session for the Kenya Green Building Society and Konza Technopolis City Virtual Green Building Conference. We are so happy and excited to be here because in the morning we were able to see some action from Konza City where we were heavily involved in tree planting. And this is an activity which started earlier this week and it's going on through the entire week. And we're doing it in partnership. So the topic of our panel session this afternoon is green infrastructure and transformative pathways to climate action and sustainability. So we want to see how trees and other greenery, these are green spaces, open spaces, how and other parts of nature, how can they impact the quality of life, promoting creativity, health, and livability. So to introduce the panel, we have Dr. Vatsal Bhatt. I don't know whether he's on the call. If you're on the call, please switch on your camera and introduce yourself. We have Mr. Julius Wambugu, the Chief Conservator of Forests. We do have Mr. Christopher Flowers, Managing Director, Kakuzi. And we also have, once again, Madam Caroline Kariuki, who is also virtually founder of Greenport. And live on stage, we have Elizabeth Chege, Chairperson, Kenya Green Building Society. And then we also have Engineer Sang from Konza Technopolis. So my first question will go to Madam Safiatou. Please introduce yourself and please tell us about your company, BuildX, what you do and how you are able to use natural resources while you are doing development. So over to you, Madam Safiatou.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Safiatou Diallo. I'm with BuildX, based here in Nairobi, Kenya. And we specialize in buildings that are environmentally friendly, as sustainable and affordable. And we look to utilize AMBTs, alternative building materials. And we concentrate also on the building envelope. The projects that I'm leading, we're specifically looking into the use of timber.
All right, thank you so much. Next will be Madam Caroline Kariuki. I know you came in wearing your hat as the director of Konza Technopolis, but right now I throw you into your other hat, which is the founder of Greenport. So please tell us more about Greenport, what you do, and then we'll hand it over to another speaker.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, my privilege to change over roles. And as Greenport Enterprises, we've been growing bamboo forests in over 18 counties in this country. And the intention is then to just create a complete value chain. So starting from large-scale nurseries where we have them in Narok and Nyeri, and then having sustainable forests that we have grown ourselves, 1,500 acres and 1,200 acres with the communities, and now looking towards commercialization of bamboo, which is actually a green building material in many ways. So that's basically what we do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Caroline Karaoke. So now it's over to Madam Elizabeth Chega. Please, I know you've spoken about the Kenya Green Building Society, but I'd like you to share more light on the World Green Building Week, and especially zero carbon buildings or zero carbon communities, so that we can be able to understand them better as Kenyans, and how we can be able to start the small steps towards that particular direction of zero carbon buildings and cities.
Thank you, John. So the discussion around net zero buildings is actually a response to the climate emergency. I think one of the things we need to really highlight is that we have a climate crisis. We're now going to go into rains. We'll see floods across the country. We'll see roads being washed away. And then we're going to rebuild them, unfortunately, in the same places. And hopefully we learn from the climate so that we actually realign to what's happening with the climate. So the response at the national, international level is that the World Green Building Council saw an opportunity for buildings to, first of all, be designed using passive design. And I always say Kenya, we're in the best position in the world. We have fantastic weather, and we have the greatest opportunity to actually build right from the beginning. So this is part of the reason why BuildX is here, because of the consideration of the thermal envelope, the building itself. What we allow into the building, we'll have to design out so that we can live. Another thing that we've really learned, I think, in the last 6 months is that we're part of nature as people. We've really learned that through the COVID experience. So if we mess up the nature, we're messing ourselves up. So the first opportunity is that with development, we go back to the drawing board. We actually do passive design. Second thing is reduce the demand for energy. By using passive design, natural ventilation, then you don't need air conditioning. You don't need huge power loads connected to your building. Third, look at renewable energy. We're all hiding in this, in this building at the moment because it's very nice and sunny outside. But that's free power, that's free energy that we should be utilizing. But just because it's free doesn't mean we overbuild and also waste the renewable energy opportunity. So reduce the demand, use efficient fixtures. At this point in time in Kenya, we are advocating for LED lighting. Going forward, it should be LED lighting, and new technology is coming out. With LED lighting, you'll be saving at least 20 to 40% of your energy consumption through lighting. I don't know anybody here who wouldn't like some extra money in their pocket for the amount of money you'd be saving on your utility bills. So that's just talking about operational energy. Third but not least is human behavior. If we build green, we don't measure, and we don't operate green, then really it's another way we're wasting resources. So net zero buildings are not for the elite, they're for everyone. And this is part of the reason we started off by saying that affordable housing must meet the minimum standards and must target net zero buildings as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for talking about how we need a healthy environment to be able to also have healthy human beings, and that's very good. And now I'd like to open the next question to Engineer Sang. This week, we are all about action. We've come to Kansas City and all we've seen is action. And this action is basically action to regenerate environments. You've come to an area and you want to create that area to be better than it is by planting more trees, and buildings which are sustainable, which can also be able to live in nature by the environment which are also regenerating. And that calls for standards. So Engineer Sang, what are these standards that you've set in place, and can you be able to tell us more about these standards? I know you touched upon them in your introduction, but would like to know more about them so that you can be able to inspire us to set standards at all times. Engineer Sang.
Thank you, Chair John. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, Ponzi Technopolis has been designed with a master plan that specifies standards, all infrastructure, right from the roads to the parks to the buildings. I mentioned earlier that all buildings will be green certified, and that on the vertical infrastructure, all vertical buildings. Any investor who will be coming to set up, be it residential, commercial, or light industrial facility, be it a hospital, will meet as a minimum requirement that green building standard. This is the only reason is to ensure that we are able to champion as a technopolis sustainability as highlighted earlier. And as we lead from the very front, as a technopolis, what we've done, we today initiated a tree planting just to commemorate this very day with trees that have been planted by all various visitors. But on the long term, we have a 1 million tree nursery that we are setting up, a smart tree nursery, which will scale up to a 10 million tree nursery to support the whole country within this green initiative. Now, it is all anchored upon sustainability because, as earlier mentioned by the chair of Green Building Council, unless we create sustainable cities where we can live, work, play, enjoy the environment, the next generation will have a very large, big challenge to live in an environment that is conducive for longevity. And it's
Engineer Sang, we are not able to hear you at all.
Hello.
Change, adaptation, and of course about air quality and biodiversity. So how
We are not able to hear you at all.
Carol, are you talking to me?
Oh, is it only you? We can't hear them.
Yeah, we can't hear anybody else.
Mm.
Can you hear us now? Um, can you hear us now? All right, would like to request Mr. Vatsal to introduce himself and the role he plays within the smart cities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for inviting me to this discussion, especially the Kenya GBC. I sincerely appreciate all your efforts in putting together a great event to look into green infrastructure and transformative pathways to climate action and sustainability. LEAD, as you know, for last 27 years, has promoted sustainability and quality of life in built environment quite substantially. And in December 2016, USGBC launched LEAD for Cities and Communities rating system to focus on cities and communities. Is there a possibility for me to share a quick screen? Thank you. I will just run through a couple of slides so that I can give you all context. But this LEAD for Cities and Communities rating system, we have tried to make it quite comprehensive. And our interest is to really focus on priorities for quality of life and sustainability, and also focus on the ways in which we talk about sustainability in a comprehensive manner. So our interest is to obviously talk about various aspects of strategies and policies that would promote sustainability, but we are also trying to make performance as the key part of this particular discussion. So we are trying to make this particular rating system address all these different aspects of safety, health, equitability, prosperity, resilience, as well as smart cities concepts. And that is where we have tried to make it innovative and transformative with a lot of data-driven discussion, data that can be substantiated, validated, and collaborative, where we try to work with a lot of stakeholders nationally and internationally, so that we can make this particular rating system globally applicable and locally relevant. However, if we can't make a business case for how our rating system is affecting people and planet and improving their quality of life, then there is minimalistic approach. So here, our main interest is to really talk about triple bottom line and talk about how we can achieve sustainability and quality of life by also making good business case for putting it on the ground. This is evidence-based and it is agile. So we are trying to make this rating system quite updated to the ongoing discussions. We have tried to incorporate a lot of different rating systems and other offerings that USGBC has, including WELL, STAR, LEAD, PEER, TRUE, GRESB, and other things. And our rating system is aligned with Sustainable Development Goals, so that you can see that we are trying to focus on each of them. We know that Sustainable Development Goal 11 is more focused on cities and communities. So we are trying to not only promote LEAD, but we are trying to promote LEAD 0 and LEAD positive. So if your communities want to go, net zero energy, net zero water, net zero waste, we would love to talk more about it. In your discussion about climate responsive, we want to make it carbon neutral as well. So these are different ways in which 111 cities and communities have already certified to LEAD. And this is a quick snapshot of it. However, you can see that various small and big, diverse communities are part of LEAD for Cities and Communities, whether they are in US or outside of US. More than 65 million people are participating as a part of these communities and cities that are integrated part of it. Here, when we talk about LEAD for Cities and Communities, that offers a very unique perspective to really now connect from interior spaces of the buildings to communities to cities. And this is a great example of Washington, DC, US national capital, which was certified to LEAD for Cities in August 2017. And this is Golden Triangle Business Improvement District, which is within Washington, DC, that got certified in September 2019 last year. And obviously, as you know, our headquarters and many other 63 buildings in this particular Golden Triangle are certified to LEED. Similar example is available in Atlanta. We are trying to define it elsewhere. When we talk about cities and communities, we want to talk about new and designing communities. We also want to talk about operating and existing communities. And we want to talk about continuous improvement. So there are various examples with which we can work with communities, but our interest is to really push the envelope on all these aspects. So you can see that we are trying to talk about ecology and natural systems. We are trying to talk about transportation and land use, water, energy, climate change, solid waste and materials and resources, quality of life, integrated planning, and innovation. You can see these are much more detailed aspects of LEED for cities and communities. And this is a scorecard that many of you who follow LEED would know very nicely. But you can see one thing I wanted to make very sure that I convey here is that we are making performance as a prerequisite. Now, this is a buzzword for people who use rating systems, but performance is made prerequisite, meaning every city and community that is working with us has to talk about performance, 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 performance. Because how cities and communities perform really matters to people on the ground. Again, we all are technical professionals, but we are also common people. And we want to have our cities and communities perform, excel in all these different aspects that you can see. So our interest is to really provide, make, facilitate high-performing cities and communities. With that, let me pause here. I can talk more about various cities and communities as well, but thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Dr. Vatsal, you can hear me?
Hi.
I have a question for you, and it's a follow-up question.
Yes, please.
Dr. Vatsal, I have a question for you, which is a follow-up to the introduction, and it is, how does the rating tool look at biodiversity and green infrastructure? Where do you look at as far as performance is concerned?
Sure. I will try to provide a brief answer, and then I can invite a more detailed question and answer a little later on. But we are talking about all natural systems. We are talking about whether you have aquatic systems or not, whether you have biodiversity or not, whether you have green spaces or not, whether you have natural resources or not, whether you have slopes and other systems or not, and how do you protect them. So we have guidelines given to cities and communities about what amount of natural systems and natural open spaces should be there. We are also talking about how much of green spaces should be there in cities and communities. We are also talking about maintaining wetlands and other natural systems as well. So there are a lot of guidance given in this particular rating system. We are also talking about resilience and how you would use these natural systems to provide resilience to cities and communities.
Thank you so much for that. I'll definitely go on to another question, and I think it is to Madam Safiatou Diallo. It's a question which was there before, and now I bring it back. And the question was that, yes, we do have environmental impacts or environmental benefits as something that we derive from the green infrastructure. I just wanted you to share more light on these environmental benefits. We are talking about air quality, biodiversity, climate change adaptation, and of course, sustainable urban drainage. How does green infrastructure help to solve all these, and why it is important to have it in the first place?
Thank you so much. We know that green infrastructure becomes a key part of achieving all these different objectives that you said, right? So for an example, in US right now, we see that there is so much of fires burning all across the West Coast. And there are so many fine particulates, whether we call to PM 2.5 or PM 10 are available. Now, point is that if at all we have more green infrastructure, there are chances to alleviate more of these particles in the air. And I think our interest is to keep on promoting that, whether we want to promote more of green infrastructure in terms of trees and other vegetation system. We want to talk about water systems. We want to talk about this green infrastructure helping climate change, because we know that it's going to absorb a lot of carbon as well. So it is going to be a carbon sink as well. So in a way, as we keep on increasing green cover in our cities and communities, we can definitely talk about bringing in a lot of different benefits. We also can talk about urban heat island. And this urban vegetation is going to help urban heat island quite a lot. We have worked, so many people have talked about green and blue infrastructure in cities and communities. And that green and blue infrastructure is key part of this discussion, where we can really promote various ways, various benefits. And the last part is health benefits part of it. We all like the greenness, the openness, and all those kind of things. In this pandemic that's around us, having green spaces around us is a big portion of biophilia discussion that we are talking about in buildings, in communities, and obviously in cities. So I think green spaces affects us in many, many different ways. So that is a very short answer, but we can also talk about various credits that we have in our rating system, focusing on these aspects.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Bartal, for your responses. And now I think I'll send this question to Madam Caroline Karaoke. You spoke about the economic benefits of green infrastructure, that is trees, and you've spoken about bamboo. So how can we be able to maximize that? Because we don't want to be planting trees, but then at the same time cutting them. So what are these alternatives that we can have, or how do we do it so that we encourage planting of trees, but then at the same time we discourage the use of those trees?
Thank you very much. One of the unique things about bamboo is that bamboo is a grass. It's not really a tree. And what that means is that it grows like bananas. So every little or sugarcane, for instance. So you find that you're cutting what is mature and yet maintaining the green cover as is. So every season you get new shoots and the forest remains while you utilize the resources. So that's one of the unique things that bamboo brings to the table in terms of being a sustainable resource for using, as a green building material. So that's why bamboo is a favorite of that. And that's why I proposed that perhaps even looking at our rivers and using that as a channel, because 1 acre of bamboo will give a farmer up to $4,000 a year for the next 40 years as an income. And also will give employment to 5 people in the value chain. So that's why in terms of using bamboo, it's not at all being used for degrading of the environment. And the other big benefit is that it cleans our waterways. So if you look at the polluted picture that I showed you earlier, where you're seeing that there's a lot of, heavy metals and discharge from the factories and also from the urban habits, poor urban habits, then you find that bamboo would clean it up and at the same time give that as a great resource to use in our green buildings. So in that way, then we can achieve both objectives. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Caroline, about that response. So I think the next question, I'd like to send it to Elizabeth Shege. And the question is about alternative materials that we can use in buildings so that we do not need to have this huge appetite for timber. So what are these materials and how can they be used in buildings? And what more can you add to that?
Thank you for that. I think the alternative material discussion has been hot this year, especially. The first question I normally ask myself, it's alternative to what? You know, what did we use to build? What is our baseline in Kenya? We already started building with stones or machine cut stones, but it wasn't because that's originally what we used to build. If you go to the rural areas, you'll find we used to use local materials. So you go to the central, it's soil, stabilized blocks, we can refer to that now. If you go further north, there's manyatas where they used to use cow dung and collect dropped wood, not chopping down trees. So that's something we really encourage, using local materials. Another thing as well is embodied carbon in materials. When we look at embodied carbon in materials is where are we getting the materials from? If we have to ship from other countries, you have to consider the fuel that has been used to bring the materials all the way to Mombasa port, from Mombasa to whichever location. So those are the considerations we need to have. So when we talk about alternative technologies, it's looking at exactly where we are in location-wise. So Konza, we can look around what's available here and create those green economies and green jobs to say our local material here is one or the other. We've seen a lot of prefabrication coming into play. We also encourage that. And the reason for it is that you can actually create these materials from in a controlled environment. So you can measure how much energy you're putting in the factory by creating those green jobs and also looking at health and safety through the process and being local to where you're providing the material for the development. Last but not least, I'd like to also mention, Madam Caroline said, water is a big issue. You know, we use a lot of energy and we talk about energy, but we forget about water. And Kenya is a water scarce country, and it's getting worse as we speak. So the opportunity is that by having local materials and actually creating them locally, we can also monitor how we're using the water. And in such environments, we can recycle the water that we're using for manufacturing. So when I talk about alternative materials, I won't pick a specific one because the alternative material here in Concept Technopolis might not be the recommended material in Mombasa or Turkana. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that response. And I think you touched upon a point which I wanted to raise, and definitely it's now a question directed to Engineer Sang, because we normally speak about planting trees, growing trees, but then there's always the issue to do with the survival rate of trees. And definitely they need water. Now, as Konza Technopolis, we've seen that you've a lot of demonstrable actions on making sure that it is a sustainable city. So what do you have in place for Konza City to make sure that you have sufficient water to green all those green intentions, that is planting trees and landscaping that you've planned in your master plan for Konza? Engineer Sang.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Yes, thank you, John. As Konza Technopolis, as mentioned earlier, our primary source of water for this city is going to be Thwake Dam, which is under construction. And we intend to have a pipeline linking Thwake Dam to Konza Technopolis. We also have a connection to Nolteresh pipeline, which gets water from the Kilimanjaro, way down at Oloitoktok. We expect to get about 2,000 cubic meters, that's about 2 million liters, to supply the interim before Thwake Dam gets to be completed. Lastly, we have 7 boreholes which have been sunk within this whole technopolis, and we hope to increase to receive water and serve in the interim during this construction period. Now, what do we intend to do with all this water? As part of sustainability, the infrastructure that has been designed at Konza Technopolis is such that all water that comes into the city from the various sources is recycled. We have 2 areas of recycling. First of all, conservation. The city has been designed to have ponds, large ponds, about 3 of them, that all water that will come into the city from rainfall and surface runoff will be collected in these ponds. Now, the ponds have been designed in such a way that all this water that is captured during the rainy season as surface runoff will be used to recharge the boreholes. But more importantly, once we get the clean water that is used within all other infrastructure for building, we have the wastewater reclamation facility. Now, all water that is received within the city will be directed, be it the storm water, be it the wastewater from the different utilities, into the wastewater reclamation facility, which will then convert the wastewater into potable water used for irrigation. And that is how we intend to address the issue of greening. All infrastructure, all the horizontal infrastructure has been connected with a return pipeline network, servicing all parcels with irrigation water as well as potable water, such that we ensure that we have a complete cycle. Good potable water, once it goes through the reclamation, taken back as irrigation, to be used in our water closets and for irrigation and for greening. That, in essence, is the basic standard that we've designed the city, such that there's no drop of water that will go to waste within this technopolis, to show the example that sustainability by design, from the very onset of ensuring all the clean water that we receive from the natural resources from Nol to Resh pipeline at the Kilimanjaro and from Twake Dam, which we've been told about, will be utilized and recycled over and over again to ensure that we have green spaces always watered within this green silicon savanna. Thank you.
Okay, please, you can add to that.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that with Konza Technopolis doing that, which is fantastic because it's something we've been advocating for across the country since we set up Kenya Green Building Society back in 2012. We've seen this happening, and we're celebrating World Green Building Week on Friday at the Sabis International School, which, as a particular loan development, had to do that. So we'd like to actually encourage more developments to come on into Konza Technopolis because the infrastructure has been done to be sustainable already. So they had to actually expand for a single school development and create that. Recycle all the wastewater, have a sewage treatment plant, use the water for flushing, use the water for irrigation. And we look forward to that being net zero water school as well, because they near 99% recycled water. But the opportunity is that now we have a city that's actually doing that. So well done, Konza. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Elizabeth, for that add-on. And I think I'd just like to share this with the rest. Yeah, no, thank you so for that. Sorry, I just wanted to add to that what Konza basically is doing is an interesting green strategy. And if you are a developer wherever you are and you've heard about this and you are shy to do it, now I think is the time to know that you don't need to be shy to do it. You've just learned from the best, and you can now do what you can do in your very own development to make sure that you can be able to recover water, because it becomes a resource once you recover it, and you can be able to apply it to other applications, for example, like landscaping and growing of trees. Now, my next question was to Madam Safiatou Diallo, and I don't know whether it's her camera which is off or she's had a bit of some tech issues and she's no longer with us. Madam Safiatou, I think, there we go. Yes. Yes, I can be able to see you. So, Madam Safiatou, I know you're doing a lot of developments using, of course, bamboo and other materials, but I just wanted to understand some more that how do you go about the development? Do you also use materials and then you regenerate those materials? For example, you plant more trees or you use alternative materials. How do you go about it? Because we want to make sure that we are growing trees, but we are also making sure that we don't reduce the number of tree species that we plant. So, Madam Safiatou, how do you normally go it as BuildX? How do you normally do it?
Well, right now as BuildX, we're looking to do joint partnerships with commercial tree farms in order to source timber that we would use in future construction. And I'd also like to just make a comment to what was stated before about the conservation of water that sometimes gets left out is we need to take a close look at the envelope of the building, meaning also are we using wet or dry construction systems? For example, we already know that 39% of like the carbon energy emitted comes from buildings. And so I think that we need to look at the life of the building if we're talking about conservation of water, from where we're sourcing the material to demo. But back to your question, yes, we're looking to work mainly with commercial tree farmers.
All right, thank you so much for that response. Now I'd like to maybe ask Dr. Vatsal one last question, and which is basically action. We live in urban areas, and we keep telling people to plant trees. Plant trees, plant trees, plant trees. And that's, of course, sinks into performance. So how practical do we go about it, and how do we start, and how do we encourage people who basically have lived like 15 years without ever considering to plant a tree, and now here we are telling them start planting trees? How do we go about it?
Well, I also believe that the action starts with us. So we need to show that action, and I know that's where we can keep on bringing more and more people around us. So we can do it, our families can do it, and that's how we can keep on promoting it. So if at all you are talking about larger campaigns to really bring more people onto this discussion, then we need to bring everybody on this discussion. So you talk about each profession, you talk about each economic strata. You need to bring everybody, give something for them to really latch onto, and everybody will have their own way. So only one strategy would not work. Probably have 5 strategies to begin with. I mean, you can do that broad analysis, which 5 strategies would work the most, but 5 strategies probably would work for, say, one city, whatever that city we are looking into, or a community that we are looking into. And having a larger campaign on those 5 different strategies would be really useful. Only plant tree may not work, but plant tree with some interesting twist to it, and so on and so forth, would be very useful. Like, for example, you all know that all of our urban areas are lacking trees, and we want to keep on talking about more and more and more tree cover. So I live near New York City, and I know that New York City has been also promoting this for so many years. And there are different ways. They use, like New York City uses policy. So at policy level, they determine certain big aspects of it that, you know, for an example, you cannot have this much of paved surfaces in your site, even to begin with at a site level. Then they talk about tree planting campaigns in the whole city, because city owns certain lands, city owns certain infrastructure, and so on and so forth. Then they try to incentivize people getting this. So they work with nurseries, they work with other institutions, organizations that are working on these aspects, and keep bringing them on board and saying, how do we all work together? It is not only one kind of trees that are going to be useful, but it is, you all know, I mean, I'm just an outsider to the this particular debate, but still, to my general understanding, it is all types of trees and all types of shrubs. And as Madam Caroline was talking about, you know, even bamboos at the grass level, but we all know that bamboo's economic benefit, as she was mentioning, that can be a very powerful way in which we can use it as well. So I think all different kinds of strategies need to be brought in. I work with energy policies for last 20 years, and I believe that there is no silver bullet for a problem or something. So we need to have multiples of solutions. And for an example, climate change mitigation that I work with for 20 years, we need to really bring multiples of solutions for that problem, not a single silver bullet. So thank you for inviting me to this discussion.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Vatsal, for that. And I think probably my last question for this afternoon goes to Madam Caroline Kariuki. You've spoken well about the business of trees, and I can see a huge economic opportunity there. We have huge unemployment in Kenya, and there you are actually seated on a silver bullet. So maybe how much more can you tell us about how we can actually grow the economy through natural systems like trees and other species like bamboo? How can we go about it? And also, where is the market and how can these products be promoted, whether through certifications as sustainable products and things like that? So how can you be able to help or even guide the youth, especially who want to take that particular direction?
One of the greatest things that we're having this discussion the week after our cabinet passed for bamboo to be made into a cash crop. So that is huge because already from a policy perspective, we are totally aligned. And I think for our CS, Tobiko, he's done a fantastic job in the ministry just to ensure that we are aligning our national goals with those of even the Born Challenge that we have taken up and our AFR targets, you know, and all the sustainability agenda, the SDG goals, because bamboo just ticks all of those, you know, boxes. So I think it's going to be very easy because once we institutionalize the framework, where we're giving even incentives to the growers, to the, you know, having even certification of, you know, carbon credits made easier. Actually, I was going to ask Vatsal how we can make it cheaper because the cost of compliance to green building standards and also to carbon credit certification, one of the reasons why my company is not yet certified is that it costs enough for me to build a factory. So I said, let me build a factory first. Before then, I can afford to then get certification for my business. And yet, you know, the beautiful thing about getting certification is that all the sinners, you know, the airlines and all the polluters get to pay for us to then green our cities. So it's a very critical part, and perhaps that will unlock a lot of the challenges. And Safiatu also clearly said where the market is. It's about partnerships. It's about deliberately working to build partnerships with contractors and with communities and just setting the, you know, the standards in our building programs and saying, look, the government will buy furniture that's made from bamboo instead of importing from, you know, I wouldn't say the word, the C word. So I think it's a whole concerted effort and also a recognition of the potential of this to our economy and to our communities, and also just, you know, from a triple bottom line, what does it really mean for us to build a green city? What is the reward? It's expensive. I can choose, you know, for me to have urban agriculture, that particular piece of land could have been used for something else. What then is my incentive to make sure that it's green? What kind of urban transportation will then mean that I don't have to use my car and then pollute? So I think there's no one way of saying this, but it has to be very deliberate. It must be supported by all sectors of the economy, you know, from the housing ministry, for ICT, and then also maybe just having KAIST look into ways of beginning to use technology to do what M-Pesa did for our country, just making it simple. So if I have a small forest, how can I use technology to then determine this is a carbon sink that I have created, and I get paid for it, you know? So I think those are some of the things that we will need to look at, but that has to be from a national perspective, but also just working with private sector and communities and also manufacturers, so that then all of us are aligned. So I hope that's a long answer to the question.
Thank you very much. It was a long but beautiful answer, because a lot has actually been said in between. And for any savvy businessman, already an opportunity has already presented itself. So it's up to them now to pick it up and run with it. But at the same time, of course, as an organization, for instance, like the Kenya Green Building Society and our members, we will try and see that we champion or advocate to have those policies in place, because basically that's why we exist. The Kenya Green Building Society is to make sure that we advance each and every piece of legislation that can help us to get a greener economy, a healthier place, and a more sustainable built environment. So as parting shots, I'd like to give each and every one of our panelists, you've spoken so well, you've been very insightful. So one last chance to talk to the audience on this World Green Building Week as your own parting shot. So I will start with our with our live team here. Engineer Sang, I'd like you to go first, and then we'll have Elizabeth. We will have Safiatou Diallo, and then we'll have Dr. Vatsal, and lastly, we'll have Director Caroline Kariuki.
We've lost you.
Unmute Dr. Sang.
Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. Sorry for that technical hitch. As I was saying, Konza Technopolis is leading the way in developing a sustainable technopolis. And we invite all members of various business community, investors, citizens, to visit this technopolis, to get to learn how we are able, from a greenfield scenario, build a sustainable city, right from the infrastructure to the guidelines that dictate how each and every building will be done, how each and every road will be done, how the green spaces will be done, to ensure we have a sustainable city within Kenya. We will champion, as the Green Building Society have said, having net zero buildings. We would not want to say that we are planning to do. We have done it, and we're doing it, and we'll invite all and sundry to visit with us and get to learn the technologies that we are adopting as a technopolis, to show that having a green society is practical, and we are doing it, and we're doing it right. Thank you.
Brilliant. This is fantastic, talking to people who are converted already. So I'll take this opportunity to show off a little bit. So this is the award I got from the World Green Building Council. It was printed on bamboo, and I'm glad we're talking about bamboo. So first Kenyan, first female, second in Africa to win the World Green Building Council Chairs Award for the work around green buildings and the built environment. And part of the reason I'm showcasing it, it was printed on bamboo, but we got a local company to recycle wood for the frame. And this is Machakos beads. They've created a frame around it. So that's an economy already that we're talking about. We can recycle wood. Let's reuse this. It's available. Madam Caroline has talked about bamboo. It's available. I don't want to see wooden doors. I want to see bamboo doors or bamboo flooring. Let's incorporate that. If we're getting wood, it has to be from Forest Stewardship Council or institutionalized forests to actually have that green economy in place. Last but not least, I'd like to invite the rest of the world to come and see Konza Technopolis. We'll be talking more about it, and we'll also be launching the Africa roadmap to net zero. I'll be presenting that on the 15th of October, but I'll make sure that we talk about Konza Technopolis. Thank you.
So over to you, Safiatu.
Just to state that we can also make trees economically viable and also environmentally sustainable by the right practices through FSC. And that if we're speaking of water conservation, that we should also consider sometimes alternative building materials. Doesn't necessarily mean new. It can be old systems that were just not once employed. And that we should take a look at our dry and wet construction systems and to consider prefab and manufacturing as we're moving forward, especially trying to build sustainable cities and considering that we are at a housing deficit. So speed of construction is also what's critical.
Okay, over to you, Dr. Vatsal, for your parting shots.
Sure. Frankly, once again, I wanted to thank Kenya Green Building Society for inviting us. I will try to follow Elizabeth's footsteps for the last parting shots and say that, you know, I have heard about Konza quite a bit. I work with Elizabeth and John in promoting Lead for Cities and Communities in Kenya. It's a great opportunity for us to work together on many such developments and find out how can we work together to, as Madam Caroline or Madam Diallo was talking about sustainable cities coming together. All these pieces are key part of us bringing it together in our development, moving towards more sustainable societies, but that offers higher quality of life to all the people. And I think that is what we all strive for. So I think it is simple that we can work together. There are multiple options. We need to bring them together. As Madam Caroline was saying, there are multiple partners that we need to bring together. So I think it's a comprehensive but integrated discussion that we need to have, not for today, but for tomorrow. So looking into a little bit long term and planning it from now. So if at all we plan for 2050 for now, that's great, but then divide it up in small chunks and say, okay, what are my next 5 years? Oh, great. Now what is my next 1 year? Oh, great. What is my next 6 months? And I think that is where we can bring this together in biteable chunks. So would love to work with you all together. US Green Building Council is very happy to be partnering with you on this webinar on this day. But we would love to partner with you in promoting bamboo, promoting green infrastructure, promoting Konza's good work and other good work that takes place in Kenya. So please consider us your partner for the long haul. Thank you so much.
I think from my end, I am so happy because the three greatest things in my life are coming together. I used to be in the housing sector before I was a banker in the mortgage sector. So if we can bring together the built environment in an affordable way, and also bring the sustainability agenda to the fore. And then Konza can then just be a showcase for the rest of Africa and the world as to what it means to build a city from the ground up with a sustainability agenda in mind. So the only way we're going to achieve this is that we have to measure what we do. We must be very clear, as Dr. Batsao says, and just be ruthless with our execution and just get it done and work with industry. Let's get our partners in industry. I think greening has moved from the CSR realm to be mainstreamed in everything that we do, so that then counts and that people can also adopt it as an easy way. And I think for me, my challenge for whether it's FSC certification or whether it's LEED or whether it's carbon, let's make it so easy to be able to do it. Let's make it M-Pesa-wise. And I think that's a challenge for Konza as our tech city, investing in the next, in the next technology that will then open this up to everybody, so that then it will be easy to adapt and something that we are all proud of. And even, as we were thinking about Konza and saying that our water sources are Nolturesh and our borehole, as well as whatever. One way of controlling flood, that whole idea of not having control is just having every single person harvest rainwater, as simple as that. And that will just make a big difference to how much water we need to harvest from our rivers. So I think I'm so privileged. Thank you, Elizabeth, and I'm so proud of you and the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for all the listeners who have been with us. Thank you for Dr. Batsao listening all the way from New York. And it's nice to see that Konza is championing this debate. Thank you very much.
Yeah, once again, a round of applause to all our speakers. Thank you very much. We come to a close of this virtual Green Building Conference session. We are really humbled and honored to be here at Konza to have this World Green Building Week event. So I'd like to maybe just point out something which, of course, wasn't seen, which is that we've spoken about trees, we've spoken about the infrastructure, and all those are what I'll call the hardware. But then there is also those softer aspects that you normally don't see, and those come through the infrastructure that we have, and that's the culture of embracing and appreciating green technologies and sustainable environments and nature. And that will go a long way in sustaining and, of course, making sure that what is actually grown or what is planted will actually grow and survive and thrive, and it can easily be passed on to future generations where they just know what to do, which becomes second nature to them, and they don't need to be reminded that this is what you need to do. So that is something which you can definitely feel once you get here in Konza, the conversations which are going around about nature, about sustainability, about technology, the convergence between technology and nature and sustainability, all those conversations. And that's the culture that we want, because we believe with that culture in place, we will be able to have a more sustainable and smart environment. So I'd like to take this chance to hand over to Madam June to close it out.
Much appreciated. Apologies, we are 3 minutes late, but allow us to appreciate our audience by reading their comments. Ian, if you can check for us, the screen's gone off. So we have a comment from Nixon Nganga. Some of the alternative materials out there are not common in the Kenyan setting, but have been used in South or West Africa. Is Konza and the Green Building Society open to having these materials applied to promote green infrastructure? Engineer Sang, I have one question that is Mark. In your smart city, how are you managing agriculture to feed the people? Are you involved in agri-tech solutions and biomimicry development? Mark also said bamboo is great to build housing and buildings. We work with French project to close to your needs. And then Eddie said Eddie Kagari, the youth are key in promoting and advocating for green infrastructure as they are the bearers of better prosperity in cooperating. We can engage more young people into this conversation to amplify the conservation in our communities and incorporating technology. And we have many other, I think because of time, we'll respond to, I'll ask Engineer Sang to respond to aspect one of the questions. But in terms of agri-tech, I'd like to mention that we are working closely with our partners, the Israeli Embassy, through our partnership team and our sales team to set up an agri-tech center in Konza to promote urban agriculture. In terms of the youth, we are privileged to be the ministry that is in charge of youth affairs, and through our cabinet secretary, we are mobilizing young people in the country through, again, our partnerships with the Kenya Green Building Society, working with youth chapters in different parts of the country, starting with Machakos, Makueni, and Kajiado, and we've now expanded through, again, a collaboration with Athi Water Service Board to get into Muranga and Kiambu. And the idea is to transfer the knowledge of smart tree nursery that we are pioneering at Konza Technopolis to different parts of the country, so that young people can get what our director was talking about, commercialization of tree nurseries. Because of time, I would just like to, as I call upon our manager in charge of partnerships to give the vote of thanks, I'd like to mention that aspects of carbon credit has been discussed. We are happy to follow that up with the partnership from other players to see how Konza can be that place that taps into the carbon credit. Those investors who are keen to buy carbon credits can actually partner with us and make Konza that investor. And that is why we have our sales manager, Anna, seated there waiting for these leads to be handed over to her. We are also committing to have the first sustainability report by a government entity, Madam Director, before end of financial year. And we hope with this kind of partners on board, we will be able to publish our first sustainability report. In terms of supporting conservation through bamboo growing, we will follow it up and see how part of our tree nurseries can support that. Investing in environmentally sustainable cities. Again, we would like to get into your database and access these companies and investors who are open to put their monies in spaces that are environmentally conscious. We had discussed the possibility of hosting a smart city conference in partnership with the Green Building Society and our partner of smart cities. And I know Caroline Karoki has noted that, and will make sure we ruthlessly implement that. And of course, we've noted the need to have aspects of conservation incorporated into the KAIST curriculum. We are lucky that we are championing that establishment of that institution, and we will work so hard to ensure that that is incorporating even as we move towards net zero buildings. So Engineer Sang, would you like to respond to that question as I call upon Madam Josephine Ndabuki, who will now take it up from here. We've now generated the leads through our events, forums, and activities, and there are teams who will carry on this relationship to see to it that we deliver on what we have said we will do. And the teams are actually Anna Wafula. Would you want to wave to the audience? That's our manager in charge of sales and our manager in charge of partnerships who will give the closing remarks. Just going to kindly come to the front, even as call upon Engineer Sang to respond to the other question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. With regard to the question concerning getting trees, if I got it correctly, or some plants from West Africa, what I'd like to point out is that when we talk about natural habitat, we intend to ensure that we are able to have tree species that are of the natural habitat, specifically for Konza Technopolis, that are not invasive. Because one area, the whole concept of sustainability is ensuring that we are able to preserve the indigenous plants, trees, flowers, so on and so forth, to ensure that we don't interfere with the natural environment. Now, having said that, being a promoting research and technology, one of the key areas that we are open to is ensuring that we're able to grow various plants and species that can be grown and planted within different ecosystems. And that is our role as a Technopolis. Research and development propagation, not necessarily for this area, but for other regions perhaps, which can then have non-invasive species planted within their specific environments. So yes, partner with us, inform us. We have our partnership division within Konza Technopolis, engage, and we are open to see what can then be grown within Konza Technopolis, and more importantly, for research and development of indigenous species for longevity and for sustainability. Thank you. So I'll hand over to my colleague. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Sang. Before I make my closing remarks, I want to acknowledge the presence of Gladys Coletit. She is our manager in charge of legal services. We are happy to have you with us. So for me, I want to say thank you very much to all of our audience, both the team that joined us physically and the team that is online. Our monthly webinars have become events that we look forward to, because they elicit conversation in the aspects that are critical for the development of not only our city, but also of the country. And so this being the week where we are celebrating the green building, this whole week is full of activity, and different stakeholders have come together to join hands in helping us achieve or celebrate this this week. And for us, this really is our highlight of the week, and we are really grateful for all of our partners that have joined with us. I want to acknowledge all of the speakers for finding time to be with us, both physically and also online. We acknowledge the remarks that you've given to us, very, very timely remarks, especially with regards to this topic. And there are quite a number of things I was able to pick up that I'll highlight. Number one is that really recognizing the role of Konza Technopolis as a space of research, innovation, and really placing that role in the center of the conversation. So when you're talking about sustainable city, what is the role of Konza? This is where we're looking at bringing together experts to research on ecologically relevant species that we can plant, and also just getting the value out of it. When we talk about commercial benefits of the trees and the greening of our country, we're looking about African medicine, the position of this Technopolis in looking at how then we're able to harness the benefits of this greenery uniqueness of our country to create value that can be recognized both in Africa and internationally. We also want to mainstream greening and greening initiatives, that it becomes a common, well understood, well celebrated agenda, and every one of us, from the youngest child in PP1 to all the way to university and even postgraduate students, how do we create a movement of passionate greeners, and not only just for the trees, but also for sustainable living. We talk about water, we're talking about our buildings. This is really a challenge, and we are really excited to be at the center of this conversation. And we welcome all of us as stakeholders to join hands, bring your ideas, and let us work together in creating this success. And again, just to leverage on the SDG number 17, which speaks to partnerships. As I think we've heard, that we can only achieve this when we work together, and therefore let us all come together. Let us bring our strengths to the table, and let us join hands in making this a success. I think it would not be fair to close without quoting Wangari Maathai. She has really contributed to the greening and the milestones we have. And so today I was inspired by one of our quotes, which says, "Every one of us can make a contribution. Just imagine the power of what we can do together. Wangari Maathai. And so I want to close by saying, let's act now. And especially during this season, we have an opportunity to leverage on the upcoming rains by really planting and making sure we not only plant, but we grow our trees. Thank you very much and welcome to take on the conversations offline. We welcome you to Konza Technopolis. Come and see the work we are doing, and we look forward to developing and growing this initiative together. Asanteni sana.
Haya, hatuna za ziada. Twashukuru. Isarap. My name is June Chepkemei. Thanks for joining.